President Trump has said he wants legal immigration cut in half because low-skilled foreign workers are costing American jobs and wages. That is simply not true. When we discuss the immigration debate in our country, detractors say they fear an influx of immigrants that leads to a loss in jobs for native-born workers. Yet, take a look at this. We currently have 6.7 million job openings, and we have 6.4 million available workers to fill them. The problem is that the available workers aren't either properly trained for the open jobs or they don't live close to where the jobs are. And if this trend continues, it may indicate that we need more immigration, not less. The number of births in the United States dropped 2% between 2016 and 2017 to the lowest fertility rate in 30 years. This is common in almost all developed countries. As people get more prosperous, they have fewer children. In fact, by 2035, without immigrants, the Centers for Disease Control estimates that the working-age population in the United States could drop by almost 8 million from recent figures. We need immigrants to fill the open jobs in our country unless we all start having more children. And when immigrants come in, they pay taxes. The Partnership for a New American Economy studied the Louisville metro area in order to provide an economic snapshot of foreign-born workers. There are similar studies all over the country, but in this one, immigrants earned $1.6 billion in income in 2016 and paid $430 million in taxes. Another study from the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine found that first-generation immigrants can impose costs on government, but as adults, the children of immigrants turn into the strongest economic contributors in the U.S. population, paying more in taxes than even other Americans. Here's how one former president framed immigration in America.
Through this golden door has come millions of men and women. These families came here to work. They didn't ask what this country could do for them, but what they could do to make this refuge the greatest home of freedom in history. Let us pledge to each other that we can make America great again.
That, of course, is former President Ronald Reagan. Joining me now is Senior Fellow at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, Jared Bernstein. Jared, thanks for being here. We've sort of bandied this topic around, but I think we need to get right into it. The headline here is that there are more jobs than workers. That's a good headline. But look 10 or 20 years down the line, and that headline is going to read very differently. We're actually going to be short of workers if President Trump, listening to his immigration advisor, Stephen Miller, get their way. We need to solve this problem of 6.4 million available workers who are not properly trained for the opening jobs. But in fact, without immigration, America suffers.
Yeah, I think the key number you put up there was the point that without immigration, the labor force would actually shrink by millions. Okay, there it is. So that is the key factoid, and that has to do with a couple of things. You mentioned the low fertility rate, and that's absolutely part of it, but it's also the fact that the baby boomers, and among whom I count myself, are aging out of the population. Now, when the baby boomers were in full force, the labor supply was growing at about 2% per year. Now it's growing at about 0.5% per year, so 1/4 that rate. And that means there's real pressure on the supply of labor, which is a key input to economic growth. Basically, and this is something I think our viewers very much intuit, the immigration program under the Trump administration is based purely on anti-immigration, on xenophobia, on all kinds of myths about what immigrants do, and not on sound economics.
All right, in fact, I'm just putting up a graphic here. The Labor Department estimates that the over 70 population will rise to 31.8 million by 2020. That's a 38% increase from the 2010 number. What we need is young, vibrant workers who pay into the system. We don't have younger workers paying into things like Social Security and other things. That really creates a problem.
Yeah, and I think another piece of that is that as we become more productive, and it's true that productivity has slowed down, but it's still positive, we may have fewer workers per retiree, but those workers will be more productive. But one way to ensure that we have more productive workers is to be more welcoming of immigrants because, and this is again widely misunderstood, the flow of immigrants into this country over the past 15 years has favored more skilled immigrants, not least skilled. The flows from the less skilled or less educated South, say Mexico, have really flattened.
Yep.
And so if you actually look at the education component of inflowing immigrants, they tend to be more highly educated and more productive.
There have been, Stephen Miller cites a study from Harvard, the Borja study, which has largely been debunked, to even indicate that low-skilled workers and or refugees, people seeking asylum, in this type of economy that we're in, the 3.8% unemployment economy, that we are actually able to absorb a lot of these people. We need low-skilled immigrants as well as high-skilled immigrants.
Well, okay, so we happen to have a very tight labor market right now, and I agree with everything you just said. But you also have to have an immigration policy that can be good for America when the unemployment rate is higher. So you have to look at immigrant competition with native-born workers, if you want to get into that part of the argument, through all kinds of labor markets. And what we find is that more often than not, immigrants complement, not substitute, for native-born workers. That is, they actually help promote occupational upgrading for workers who were born here. If anything, when they're competing with immigrants who got here before they did.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.